I am. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. No, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Honored to have this conversation.
And we are so honored to have you here as well. And I actually really want to kick us off here with you telling us about your book, Can Mommy Go to Work? I think that especially as we're looking at all of these women, especially underserved groups of women that have been forced out of the workforce, it's so important to, include this book when talking to our children. And so can you please tell us a little bit more about the book? What was the inspiration behind the book and what do you hope to achieve? And how do you think it's relevant now with everything that's happening?
Oh my God, this book is more relevant now than ever. And I wrote the book pre-pandemic. It's a very quick read. It's meant for moms whose kids still enjoy bedtime stories, but moms really don't feel like staying there and reading entire Iliad to their kids every night before they go to bed. It's very short. My children helped write the characters. They picked out what their characters were gonna wear. They approved the theme of the book, which was basically mommy is the main character of the story, and she's getting ready for a very big day. She's becoming a manager in the office, and her children understand that, and they're trying to contribute to the day in their own special way. So her daughter is telling her, you look cute, but you could wear a better necklace. And her son is pouring salt in her coffee instead of sugar to make her laugh. And of course, being a working mom and having all of these things going on, she's very anxious and blows up at the kids, right? And the kids tell her what their intention was. And the mother says, you are always in my heart. Don't feel like you have to contribute to my big day. You're going to be with me on my big day. And they see her off. And the theme of the book is that it's a working mom. She's a single working mom. She's empowered. She's finally gotten a seat at the table. And these themes translate very much so mid-pandemic. And I'm very lucky that companies have bulk purchased the book for their working parents ERGs. And I just didn't think that the book would be so popular as it is with working moms.
And I think one of the things that's important there, and that has kind of been a common theme throughout today's conversations, is, putting yourself first, right? And making the main character mom. Because, we talk about you, for example, and you're working, you're balancing, all of these speaking engagements, all of your influence across Twitter, LinkedIn, other social media accounts, writing for different outlets. How do you balance all of that and add on being a mom? Which is not easy.
No, it is not. And I don't balance it. And that was the question that I used to get pre-COVID all the time, which was, how do you balance it all? And now the question I get the most is, what would you tell another woman? Like, how would you inspire them? Because I think people have reached the point where they realize that you cannot have it all. And your attention to different things ebbs and flows, right? So there's certainly times where I am disconnected offline, spending time with my children. And there are other times where my children very much so understand that work is the priority for that hour. And you cannot, unless you are dying or bleeding, come into my bedroom to talk to me. So I think that that's the key, is that there is no such thing. I just want to reiterate that there is no such thing as work-life balance. There are going to be times where you devote yourself to different aspects of your life. What I would hope, though, and I think that we're going to touch on this in this conversation, is that you find a time to devote to yourself as well, not just to your children and not just to work.
And I love that you bring this up, because that was actually where I was going to kind of go next, is, looking at all these things that you're doing. One, how do you set a time aside for yourself? Do you schedule that in, or what does that look like for you? And, selfishly wondering myself, what are your best self-care practices? Everyone is different, of course, but definitely love to pick up some different things from different people. And then I forgot the second part of what I was going to say, so I'm going to hand that off to you and then I'll come back.
Sure. So last year when I was in therapy and learned that I should be having these self-care moments because they actually contribute to loving myself. And I didn't even realize that. I didn't realize that I was actually at a deficit of love for myself. But I was like, okay, I'm going to schedule 1 month of moment of self-care each month. But what I will do is alternate it. So 1 month I'll go to get my hair done. 1 month I'll go to get my nails done. 1 month I'll go to therapy, and 1 month I'll get a massage, but I'll do it throughout the year. And that was a horrible idea that I learned later in therapy, because I was treating that like it was an appointment on my calendar, and I was not indulging in loving myself, and that I wasn't caring for myself. It was a task, just like any other meeting on my calendar. And also it was too few and far in between. Every month is not enough time. So I had to go and really think about what it meant to love myself and what it meant to have those self-care moments and why I was doing that. And it was because on a daily basis, I was burnt out. So that meant on a daily basis, I had to indulge in self-care. And now that's what I do. And that could be as small as treating myself to McDonald's, because I absolutely freaking love McDonald's. I don't care how politically incorrect it is. It could be having a bubble bath and just listening to Sade music. It could literally be, and this is becoming one of my favorite self-care moments, locking my bedroom door at night and not unlocking it until about 8 o'clock in the morning. That means you can't jump in my bed. You know, you can't bang down my door and ask me to read you another story or ask me to get you a glass of water. And that's my time to just decompress, watch my favorite adult shows on TV, not watch Paw Patrol. And it is one of the best self-care moments ever. And it's daily, and I love it.
Oh, I speak for myself and probably many other people listening when I say I do not have a self-care routine, and it is definitely weighing on me. Although I'm about to start adding the gym, so you know, that's probably a step in the right direction. But I wanted to, yeah, it is, right? At least that's a hope. Because I love McDonald's too. I cannot tell a lie. Like that and soda, oof, so good. So right. I wanted to ask you actually. Oh wait, what were you gonna say?
I said, now I'm sold on what's for dinner. I was gonna cook, but this is a self-care moment, so we're gonna do that.
Yes. So I want to follow up on that and ask how you kind of communicated that to your children to help them understand that you do need time for yourself, that isn't working, that isn't with them. And do they understand that?
Yeah, they do. They're 9 and 6. They're not around toddler age, which I think is, you know, so many women, God bless you, you're going through that where the kids can't really comprehend that you need time to yourself. But my kids and I are very open and we have honest communication. I'm divorced. I've been divorced for a few years now. And post-divorce, I put my children in therapy just in case. They said they didn't need it. They didn't feel like, you know, expressing themselves through that. But I wanted them to go through that experience to understand that it's okay to communicate and over communicate your feelings. So now we have that practice. And I went to them and I said, not only does my therapist think that I'm spending a little bit too much time with you and not recharging, but I also think it's healthy for you guys to understand that I need to escape and recharge, because I think it's important for you to understand that it's okay for you to not always have to be around mommy, or for you to not always have to be around your brother or sister. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean you don't love us. It just means that you need to recharge and regroup and come back to who you are so that you can spend time with us and actually enjoy the time you spend with us. So we all have that time. My son right now, he's home. My daughter's at karate, but my son is home in his room right now recharging, which is lovely, which is so fantastic. You know, it won't always be that way, but I think that that over communication and that honesty is what helped.
And I think you make such a good point, right? Because obviously they follow the example that we set. And if we're not setting the example of setting aside time for ourselves and, you know, building that self-care into our routine, whatever your indulgence is, they're not going to learn that. And especially if we have daughters or nieces, or if we have young women in our lives who are looking up to us, that's so important, because how many times do we just give ourselves and give ourselves and give ourselves? And so, you know, with all of this, of course, we have to talk about mom guilt, right? Because why is it always there, right? Like, I wish it wasn't, but it is. So how do you combat that mom guilt? And does it pop up for you in your day-to-day?
Oh my God, yes, it absolutely pops up for me in my day-to-day. But what I will say is I'm a big fan of learning from previous generations, and God bless the working single moms who came before us, because I feel like their level of mom guilt was nowhere near our level of mom guilt. Us millennials, I don't know what it is, but we certainly feel like we have to be super women and we have to nurture and protect our kids. And that is true, but to a certain extent. And I think that I am of the mindset of, I guess, a Generation X mom, where I understand that one day my kids will grow up And I don't want them coming to me at 17 and 18 years old asking me, can they watch TV with me, or laying up underneath of me? I want them living their lives. I want them experiencing all the glory that this world has to offer, especially post-pandemic when they can go travel. So I think that I'm always thinking, I have a little bit of more foresight, and I'm always thinking about the future. I don't want my kids to be dependent on me. And I think that that is something that I think mothers today really don't understand, is that the more that we shelter and hide our feelings from our kids, or hide certain events that are going on, traumatic events in our lives, be it a divorce, be it struggling with finances, be it trying to navigate during the pandemic, be it burnout, when we hide all of that from our kids, not only does it teach them to conceal those feelings within themselves, but it doesn't really prepare them for the future. You know, that we don't live in a world where everything is perfect. So I think that that's the biggest thing, is I'm always trying to prepare them to be independent. And I think that's also something that comes from being a single mom. I don't have the luxury of being able to shelter my kids from everything, or I would just simply break down.
Such valid points. So thank you for touching upon all of that. And, you know, I've noticed by following you on LinkedIn, which again, I want to shout out, everyone needs to do, and we will drop your LinkedIn in the chat. Because you drop, like, I just love all the stuff that you share. And I've seen that you shared a lot about this caregiving crisis that we're going through, right? And caretaking crisis. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So since March 19th of last year, Black women have spent an extra 12 hours a week on caring for their children versus white women. So, and on top of that, it tends to be that underrepresented groups like Latina women and Black women are living in multi-generational households. So it is such a disproportionate effect when it comes to caregiving for those groups. I think back, like, gosh, I can't even imagine how much an extra 12 hours, I can't do that math in my head, but it's probably over 600 hours at this point that those women are spending caring for children, not even including caring for older family members, not even taking into consideration the fact that Black people are more susceptible to COVID because of pre-existing health conditions. So I am, yes, as you said, very passionate about caregiving and providing some type of solution for those women, especially, who are not only dealing with all of that, but we know the recent jobs report shows that while white women, their unemployment rate is staying flat, for underrepresented groups, it continues to rise. So those women need caregiving more than ever, because that's the number one voluntary reason women are leaving the workforce, not furloughs and layoffs. Those are, of course, up there, but that's involuntary. Caregiving is a huge problem. It is an absolute huge problem in our nation right now. And it absolutely affects not only our society, but it's affecting the bottom line of many corporations, because a lot of their employees are just burnt out and cannot handle this pandemic and caring for kids in it.
Yes, and you know, it feels like at this point, like, there's almost sort of this normalization of what we're living in, and there's something normal about what we're living in, and it's like, you know, we're still going through all of these things. Like, virtual learning is still happening. Like, there's still so many stressors out there. And when we talk about this, you know, women in particular, and especially underrepresented groups being forced out of the workplace, you're also talking about all of the people that are still there absorbing that work, right? And so for the people that haven't left, they're absorbing that. And so if they're still working, you know, they have all that extra pressure and stress and all of these other things going on. And so it's interesting that we're sort of normalizing this now, right? Like, all right, well, 1 year down or almost a year in, like, but like, no, we're still very stressed. And so talking about this, how do you best advise employers to empower the working moms on their teams who have other adversities they're dealing with? Because, you know, being a working mom is difficult. And like you just mentioned, but being a Black working mom or being a Latina working mom who you are possibly living in a multi-generation household, like, that adds other adversities that we don't see on the surface.
It absolutely does. And what I've been telling companies is to make sure that they're encouraging employees to use any type of resources that they have available. And on the flip side of that, I've been encouraging employees to leverage those resources, because this whole process is a vicious cycle. If employees aren't leveraging the benefits that are being offered by employers, employers are going to think you're fine. And then they're going to stop offering those benefits, but you're not fine. So your work is going to suffer. And then that's going to have a negative connotation and stigma towards working parents within that workplace. So it is a cycle. It is an absolute cycle. It's up to employees to bring their authentic selves to work and say, hey, listen, this is a rough week. I'm burnt out. Is this really a project that I need to tackle today? Or is it something that I can push towards the end of the month? And then it's up to employers to actually speak up and check in on their employees. Women in the Workplace report from Lean In just said that only 1 in 3 managers check on their Black employees, which I think is absolutely crazy. These employers should absolutely be checking on every employee, especially right now during the pandemic, and seeing if they need resources, if they are aware of the resources that the organization is offering, if they need a mom buddy, which I also advocate for in the workplace. I mean, there's so much right now that has come about post COVID, or I should say mid COVID, that's available for employees to take advantage of and for employers to offer. There's really no excuse to be behind the curve on this one.
Oh, totally. And even when you think about all of these fast growing startups and a lot of these benefits that companies are now starting to offer, because that's what employees need, right? And they're in tune with what employees need, which is support, right? Whether it's mental health support or, not in-house childcare now, but like maybe a stipend for childcare monthly, what have you. And so I want to bring up something, because when we talk about talking to our employers, I think, speaking very generally here, as women, we can feel anxious, we can feel nervous, we can feel coy about approaching our employers and telling them what we need. But on the other hand, due to the pandemic, you may be the sole breadwinner in your family. We're just talking about that on the last panel. And so that adds the other stress, because maybe you're a little bit scared to approach your employer because you're worried they will think you're not effective, you're not efficient in your job. And so I want to ask you, what advice would you give to a woman, and like, how would you best support her to be confident in asking for the things that she needs?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm having an impromptu clubhouse talk about this tonight at 7. Like, there are a number of women who aren't feeling comfortable mid-pandemic asking for a raise or a promotion. And my thing is, as women, we are always so concerned about everybody to the left and the right of us but us. And from a professional perspective, no one is going to care about your career but you. And what people don't understand is imposter syndrome is real, and it affects underrepresented groups. And women fall into that category as an underrepresented group. So what I always recommend is, if you're thinking about all the doubt and negativity and the feeling that you don't belong, or the feeling that you shouldn't ask for a raise, more than likely you have the evidence to show that you should have a raise, or you have at least an inclination or an inkling that you should be asking for a raise or a promotion. So keep a list of your accomplishments, and don't be afraid to reference those and point those out as examples. Show them what you did. Talk about the fact of how I improved the company with numbers to back it up. Be it if you saved, if it was a time savings, be it if you brought additional revenue to the organization, but have those concrete facts, because then that way it kind of serves as, it mitigates the self-doubt, because now you have concrete proof that you are the ish, okay? The second thing I would say is, when it comes to with the doubts and the naysaying in your head, 85% of the things that we think will happen will never happen. And of the 15% that do, it doesn't happen in the way that you think. So even asking for the raise or the promotion doesn't mean you're immediately going to get fired, which is, I think, where everybody's head goes. It actually opens up a conversation and actually shows that you're interested and invested in the company and are looking to grow with the company. So again, just get out of your own head. Realize that there's no prince, there's no white knight. No one's coming to extend their hand to lift you up and carry you to the next plateau of your career. You've got to take accountability for yourself.
I love it. I love your advice. You're so funny. It's so great to talk to you. So let's talk post-pandemic, right? Whenever this world appears, because I think we all thought it was going to be 2021. Now we're all like, okay, maybe 2023. But there is hope with vaccinations and, especially in the US, vaccinations on the rise. And so lots of hope there. What do you hope that employers take away from this entire experience? And what do you hope to see post-pandemic for employees and especially underrepresented groups?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the empathy will remain in subsequent years. I think last year with the death of George Floyd and the pandemic, there was this air of empathy across our country where people understood that underrepresented groups are suffering, and they're suffering in some cases where they're being silenced. They're not suffering in silence. And then also the disproportionate effect of work on moms. This whole work-life balance is a myth. So I hope employers will continue to carry that in 2021 and beyond, and understand that those marginalized groups have special needs. And sometimes when you attack those special needs, you're actually benefiting the whole organization. I'm hoping that it will finally come to light that diversity in an organization contributes to innovation, and innovation drives your bottom line. So it actually behooves you to have multicultural professionals in your organization. And then I'm hoping that they understand that childcare is absolutely an economic development opportunity for their city and then also for their organization. Without childcare, you are absolutely limiting your talent pool. You wouldn't believe how badly you're limiting your talent pool when you haven't solved the childcare problem.
Oof, yeah. Childcare has been in crisis like way before the pandemic. And now this is just throwing us right into a wall.
Over, let's not go back to status quo.
Oh, terrible, no? It's like so interesting living in Argentina where they have 3 months paid maternity leave by law and then 3 months of optional unpaid maternity leave, right? And then you look at places in the US, and I think about my own experience. And, I come from a very privileged background. My parents are both white. And like my mom at 6 weeks had to send me to a babysitter because she couldn't get any more time off. And I have a friend who was a teacher and couldn't get paid. The only reason she got paid time off was because she had a C-section, not for natural birth, which is like incredible, especially because you're working in the teaching field, right? Which is essentially kind of that extension of, that maternal aspect. So I want to ask you, when we talk about childcare looking forward and when we talk about maternity leave, what do you think is the most proactive policy that the US, particularly is lacking in?
Well, I definitely think 6 weeks is not enough for any type of maternity leave. I think that we should be considering all of the different options of parenting. I don't think that a lot of leaves cover all of those different options, not just natural childbirth, but adoption. I think that fertility treatments also, I think that it should be a holistic form of support from pre-pregnancy all the way to post. I think that there's a definite disconnect in the fact that after you have the baby, you aren't all of a sudden the superwoman who's confident in being a mom. Postpartum depression is real. Postpartum anxiety is real. There's a gap there that needs to be solved. And I think that it could be solved in partnership with the employer from a mental health perspective and some of the resources that they offer. I do think that I think that we have a great administration in place who is looking to other countries for solutions on how to handle childcare and how to handle parental leave. But there could be some onus on the employer to offer some type of holistic support too.
Totally. And I think especially when you talk about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage, all of these things. And then also, something that I've seen come up on LinkedIn is also grief, right? And those who are experiencing fertility struggles and miscarriage and all of these other things that go into paternity, right? Or even when adopting and when things don't work out. And I mean, there's a lot of different aspects here.
There is.
Oh, Christine, I really wish you did not have to go because this has been such an amazing conversation. But I do want to ask you, how can we support you? Where can we follow you? What do you have coming up next?
Yes, you can support me by advocating for mothers in the workplace, first of all. That's all I ask for. Just make it easier for your fellow woman who is a mother, who's considering becoming a mother, and who's a caregiver. But you can find me at ChristineMichelCarter.com and on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at CMichelCarter.
I love it. And I highly, highly, highly encourage everyone who's listening to go follow Christine because she is hilarious, as she said, and as I said, but also she really shares really up-to-date information. So thank you so much, Christine. It was so lovely having you here. And with that, I am just excited to bring in our next panelists and our next conversation. And I just want to shout out again that if you're looking for SHRM credits for today's talk, you can find those at the top left corner of the screen. Thank you everyone who's tuning in to today's conversations and being a part of this, whether it's questions, comments, all of that good stuff. We're so happy to have you here. I did want to shout out as well that PowerToFly is proud to direct 50% of proceeds from 100% of proceeds purchased from the merchandise shop to Trans Tech Social, an incubator for LGBTQ